This is Jane Douglas for GameSpot UK. I'm joined by Jonathan Jacques-Belletete, art director for Deus Ex Human Revolution.
Yeah.
If you'll be so kind, we're going to talk through some of the concept art, some of the designs and art direction of what we've seen of the game so far. Okay?
Yeah, sure.
All right, so let's
Sounds
start with the design of the main character,
Yeah.
if you wouldn't mind.
That was the hardest thing ever. It took us about 2 years to really nail him down. The idea was straight from the beginning, from the game director, Jean-François, we wanted to have the augmentations at the forefront of the experience, So we wanted him to be an agent that could be dropped behind enemy lines, right? So kind of like a Sam Fisher or like a Solid Snake or something like that. But also we wanted him to be kind of James Bond at the same time. He needed to be someone that could also go into like a rich restaurant or something like this and then interview someone. And all this from the same character, from the same design, and at the same time having his augmented arms being visible at the same time. So for the first year and a half, all the designs kind of revolved around something where a vest was involved, to get the bare arms. So what ended up is that he looked like a douchebag all the time, or like a biker, or like a doorman or something like that, you know what I mean? So what ended up happening is that now he has two costumes. So he's got his urban thing with his trench coat, which is kind of very cyberpunky, and he's got his armored thing where all of his arms are there for you to see and all that stuff. At the same time, the idea was to mix a bit of the Renaissance aesthetics with the cyberpunk aesthetics at the same time, because we saw kind of like a strong link between the two eras. One era was about understanding the functioning of the human body, and cyberpunk is about augmenting the human body. So it's almost as if it's just one continuous curve, really. So also we needed to put that into Adam. So it ended up being on his jacket, like he's got those little stripes, and his sleeves are a little poofy.
Okay.
But his augmentations don't have that. It's really just kind of like his jacket.
Okay.
So the Adam that we have now that we really like took about 2 years, and then when we nailed him, I think we all cried a little bit because it was like finally.
So beautiful.
Yeah, it works. Yeah.
The cyberpunk Renaissance connection,
Yeah.
that's where all the Icarus imagery comes from.
Absolutely, yeah. It was kind of like all the same kind of week where I started thinking about all those things. The Renaissance was when I started making my research in transhumanism, and then reading all the books and all that stuff. And then at one point I stumbled upon the images from Leonardo's anatomy sketches and stuff like that. And I was like, this is just, it looks like a cybernetics augmentation, even though it's just like the human body. And then the Icarus thing was that I wanted to find a fable or kind of some kind of myth that connected with the themes that we're playing with in the game. And the Icarus myth was just a perfect analogy to augmenting yourself. His dad Daedalus builds him his wings, which is basically augmenting yourself. And he goes, don't go too crazy, don't go too close to the sun. So the sun represents kind of over-exaggerating, overindulging in transhumanism, which is just like anything, like plastic surgery or whatever. If you go too crazy, you mess yourself up.
They're more than human.
We've got some sort of noir going on here as well. This looks very Blade Runner to me.
Yes, obviously, hard to get away from Blade Runner when you're trying to do some cyberpunk, even if you're mixing it with the Renaissance or the Baroque or whatever. So yeah, that was Megan Reed's office, which is Adam's ex-girlfriend, and then stuff happens, whatever you'll see in the game, obviously. So the idea, one of the main thing of the art direction in terms of environments is clutter. That was a big thing for me. So we have like over 1,300 props in the game. And their purpose is really to just clutter the hell out of the rooms and stuff like that.
So you're trying for a different kind of sci-fi aesthetic.
That's exactly what it was at the beginning. We actually asked ourselves, we could probably with today's consoles reproduce Blade Runner's look, or even like the very kind of clean aesthetic of other sci-fi stuff like Minority Report or whatever. And we say, it's ready to do something different. That's where the Renaissance came in, and as well the kind of like more earthy tones, like not sticking to this kind of desaturated grayish or bluish imagery that's usually associated with sci-fi. And it worked with our themes because our themes are so much about the human body and the modification of the human body and humanism. It says it's transhumanism, so this kind of like more earthy, almost skin tone kind of palette worked really, really well for that. And even if people don't make the connection, it doesn't matter. It still kind of what drove us to do it. Yeah.
Okay.
The teal is there, but the way that we call it is actually black and gold as the name of our palette. I said let's go with black and gold. It's never really been done. The idea is that black represents kind of like cyberpunk, kind of like dystopian aspect of the game, and you know, sorrow or the end of the world or whatever, which are big themes in the game. And then the gold is the golden era, is the Renaissance, is the human body, and it's the augmentations and all that kind of stuff, because there's still a bit of hope. And again, if you look as well as some Renaissance and Baroque painters like Vermeer or Rembrandt, it's very black and gold as well, because at night they would paint with candles and things like that. So it also works with the analogies and the metaphors.
How did you go about designing the arms on Adam?
On Adam, yeah.
Yeah, that must be some work.
The early kind of high-level concept was to go quite uncanny with his arms, because we said, you know, why is it that if you make, you know, a prosthetic arm that's like stronger, faster, or whatever, more durable, you know, you don't need to imitate exactly the human arm. You know, the human arm looks the way that it looks for certain reasons, and it comes with its limitation, you know. So for example, the joints could move in any directions if you wanted to, and then the arm could look totally different. You could probably have some weird kinks in it, you know, and it wouldn't really matter. So we tried to go into that direction to kind of bring this point across, to say that, you know, in most you know, kind of science fiction literature where there's cybernetics, they always reproduce the limbs almost as is, but they're going to make them metal looking or whatever. As we said, you know, it doesn't actually need to be like that. So, you know, we came back with something a little more traditional maybe that we've seen, you know, it's kind of like the badass kind of, you know, slick black looking, almost like a bodysuit type looking thing. But what was really important is that it still looked like it's not a regular arm in a bodysuit. You know, I told Jim, my other concept art is because it was really a work effort. Even though we went back to this more traditional look, that you still have to know that this is they're actually his arms. They're not, you know, it's not a suit. So if you look at it carefully, it's a little kind of uncanny still. There's a piece of flesh, I guess you could say, that would be kind of chopped off right behind his elbow. That's not possible in a real human arm, and things like that. The wrist is fairly thin, things like this, you know. So we still have a bit of that uncanniness, but it's way less prominent. And the way that they look, I guess, is something that's easier to absorb for people totally. In general.
Okay, thanks very much for joining us, Jonathan. Tell us again, when is the game out and what for?
So the game will be out in Europe on August 26th. And in the States on August 23rd for PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and of course, PC.
It's not the end of the world, but you can see it from here.